All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I feel like my voice sounds kind of weird. I've been on a plane all day. It's not even all day, it's early afternoon. So I feel like my voice sounds funny. That happens. Anyway, hi, everyone. This is for Christian. This is the 14th and final section of The Color of Magic, the first Discworld book. I'm going to finish the first Discworld book now. How does this happen? At the very edge of the city and country of Krull was a large semicircular amphitheater with seating for several tens of thousands of people. It's the Hunger Games. The arena, it's not. It could be. The arena was only semicircular for the very elegant reason that it overlooked the cloud sea that boiled up from the rimfall far below, and now every seat was occupied. Oh no. Oh, there's a crowd for this. And the crowd was growing restive. It had come to see a double sacrifice and also the launching of the great bronze spaceship. Neither event had yet materialized. The arch-astronomer beckoned the master launch controller to him. "Well," he said, filling a mere 4 letters with a full lexicon of anger and menace. The master launch controller went pale. "No news, Lord," said the launch controller, and added with a brittle brightness, "except that your prominence will be pleased to hear that Garhartra has recovered." "That is a fact he may come to regret," said the arch-astronomer. "Yes, Lord." "How much longer do we have?" The launch controller glanced at the rapidly climbing sun. 30 minutes, your prominence. After that, Krull will have revolved away from Great Atuan's tail, and the potent Voyager will be doomed to spin away into the Interrapine Gulf. I have already set the automatic controls, so... All right, the arch-astronomer said, waving him away. The launch must go ahead. Maintain the watch on the harbor, of course. When the wretched pair are caught, I will personally take a great deal of pleasure in executing them myself. Yes, Lord. The arch-astronomer frowned. What else have you got to say, man? The launch controller swallowed. All this was very unfair on him. He was a practical magician rather than a diplomat, and that was why some wiser brains had seen to it that he would be the one to pass on the news. "A monster has come out of the sea and is attacking the ships in the harbor," he said. "A runner just arrived from there." "A big monster," said the arch-astronomer. "Not particularly, although it is said to be exceptionally fierce, Lord." The ruler of Krull and the circumference considered this for a moment and then shrugged. "The sea is full of monsters," he said. "It is one of its prime attributes. Have it dealt with, and Master Launch Controller." "Lord, if I am further vexed, you will recall that 2 people are due to be sacrificed. I may feel generous and increase the number." "Yes, Lord." Excuse me. The Master Launch Controller scudded away, relieved to be out of the autocrat's sight. The potent Voyager, no longer the blank bronze shell that had been smashed from the mold a few days earlier, rested on its cradle on top of a wooden tower in the center of the arena. In front of it, a railway ran down toward the edge, where, for the space of a few yards, it turned suddenly upward. The late Dactylos Goldeneyes, who had designed the launching pad as well as the potent Voyager itself, had claimed that this last touch was merely to ensure that the ship would not snag on any rocks as it began its long plunge. Maybe it was merely coincidental that it would also, because of that little twitch in the track, leap like a salmon and shine theatrically in the sunlight before disappearing into the cloud sea. There was a fanfare of trumpets at the edge of the arena. The Chelonauts' honor guard appeared, to much cheering from the crowd. Then the white-suited explorers themselves stepped out into the light. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. It immediately dawned on the arch-astronomer that something was wrong. Heroes always walked in a certain way. For example, they certainly didn't waddle, and one of the Chelonauts was definitely waddling. This is too much. The roar of the assembled people of Krull was deafening. As the Chelonauts and their guards crossed the great arena, passing between the many altars that had been set up for the various wizards and priests of Krull's many sects to ensure the success of the launch, the arch-astronomer frowned. By the time the party was halfway across the floor, his mind had reached a conclusion. By the time the Chelonauts were standing at the foot of the ladder that led to the ship, and was there more than a hint of reluctance about them, the arch-astronomer was on his feet, his words lost in the noise of the crowd. One of his arms shot out and back, fingers spread dramatically in the traditional spellcasting position, and any passing lip reader who was also familiar with the standard text on magic would have recognized the opening words of Vest Cake's floating curse, and would then have prudently run away. Its final words remained unsaid, however. The arch-astronomer turned in astonishment as a commotion broke out around the big arched entrance to the arena. Guards were running into the daylight, throwing down their weapons as they scuttled among the altars or vaulted the parapet into the stands. Something emerged behind them, and the crowd around the entrance ceased its raucous cheering and began a silent, determined scramble to get out of the way. The something was a low dome of seaweed. moving slowly but with a sinister sense of purpose. One guard overcame his horror sufficiently to stand in its path and hurl his spear, which landed squarely among the weeds. The crowd cheered, then went deathly silent as the dome surged forward and engulfed the man completely. Oh, it's the luggage. Oh. The arch-astronomer dismissed the half-formed shape of Vestcake's famous curse with a sharp wave of his hand and quickly spoke the words of one of the most powerful spells in his repertoire, the Infernal Combustion Enigma. I almost said engine, but enigma. Octarine fire spiraled around and between his fingers as he shaped the complex rune of the spell in midair and sent it, screaming and trailing blue smoke, toward the shape. There was a satisfying explosion, and a gout of flame shot up in the clear morning sky, shedding flakes of burning seaweed on the way. A cloud of smoke and steam concealed the monster for several minutes, and when it cleared, the dome had completely disappeared. There was a large charred circle on the flagstones, however, in which a few clumps of kelp and bladderwrack still smoldered. And in the center of the circle was a perfectly ordinary, if somewhat large, wooden chest. It was not even scorched. Someone on the far side of the arena started to laugh. That was me. That's me in the arena. But the sound was broken off abruptly as the chest rose up on dozens of what could only be legs and turned to face the arch-astronomer. A perfectly ordinary, if somewhat large wooden chest does not, of course, have a face with which to face. But this one was quite definitely facing. I'm so excited to see face used as a verb. In precisely the same way as he understood that, the arch-astronomer was also horribly aware that this perfectly normal box was in some indescribable way narrowing its eyes. It began to move resolutely toward him. He shuddered. "Magicians!" he screamed. "Where are my magicians?" Around the arena, pale-faced men peeped out from behind altars and under benches. One of the bolder ones, seeing the expression on the arch-astronomer's face, raised an arm tremulously and essayed a hasty thunderbolt. It hissed toward the chest and struck it squarely in a shower of white sparks. I imagine it did nothing, but let's find out. That was the signal for every magician, enchanter, and thaumaturgist and Kroll to leap up eagerly and, under the terrified eyes of their master, unleash the first spell that came to each desperate mind. Charms curved and whistled through the air. Soon the chest was lost to view again in an expanding cloud of magical particles, which billowed out and wreathed it in twisting and disquieting shapes. Spell after spell screamed into the melee. Flame and lightning bolts of all 8 colors stabbed out brightly from the seething thing that now occupied the space where the box had been. Oh, not since Mage Words had so much magic been concentrated on one small area. The air itself wavered and glittered. Spell ricocheted off spell, creating short-lived wild spells whose brief half-life was both weird and uncontrolled. The stones under the heaving mass began to buckle and split. One of them, in fact, turned into something best left undescribed, and slunk off into some dismal dimension. Oh my god. Other strange side effects began to manifest themselves. A shower of small lead cubes bounced out of the storm and rolled across the heaving floor, and eldritch shapes gibbered and beckoned obscenely. 4-sided triangles and double-ended circles existed momentarily before merging again into the booming, screaming tower of runaway raw magic that boiled up from the molten flagstones and spread out over Kroll. That is the best. That is amazing. It no longer mattered that most of the magicians had ceased their spellcasting and fled. The thing was now feeding on the stream of octarine particles that were always at their thickest near the edge of the disk. Throughout the island of Kroll, every magical activity failed, as all the available mana in the area... I guess it's mana. Have I ever said that word out loud? Mana. It's mana. In the area was sucked into the cloud, which was already a quarter of a mile high, and streaming into mind-curdling shapes. Hydrophobes on their sea-skimming lenses crashed screaming into the waves. Magic potions turned to mere impure water. In their phials, magic swords melted and dripped from their scabbards. But none of this in any way prevented the thing at the base of the cloud, now gleaming mirror-bright in the intensity of the power storm around it, from moving at a steady walking pace toward the arch-astronomer. Oh, this is happening. Rincewind and Two-Flower watched in awe from the shelter of Potent Voyager's launch tower. The honor party had long since vanished, leaving their weapons scattered behind them. "Well," sighed Two-Flower at last, "there goes the luggage." He sighed. "Don't you believe it," said Rincewind. "Sapient pearwood is totally impervious to all known forms of magic. It's been constructed to follow you anywhere. I mean, when you die, if you go to heaven, at least you'll have a clean pair of socks in the afterlife." But I don't want to die yet, so let's just get going, shall we?" "Where?" said Two-Flower. Rincewind picked up a crossbow and a handful of quarrels. "Anywhere that isn't here," he said. "What about the luggage?" "Don't worry. When the storm has used up all the free magic in the vicinity, it'll just die out." In fact, that was already beginning to happen. The billowing cloud was still flowing up from the area, but now it had a tenuous, harmless look about it. Even as Two Flowers stared, it began to flicker uncertainly. Soon it was a pale ghost. The luggage was now visible as a squat shape among the almost invisible flames. Around it, the rapidly cooling stones began to crack and buckle. Two Flower called softly to his luggage. It stopped its stolid progression across the tortured flags and appeared to be listening intently. Then, moving its dozens of feet in an intricate pattern, it turned on its length and headed toward the potent Voyager. Rincewind watched it sourly. The luggage had an elemental nature, absolutely no brain, a homicidal attitude toward anything that threatened its master, and he wasn't quite sure that its inside occupied the same space-time framework as its outside. It doesn't. It's a TARDIS in there. Not a mark on it, said Two Flower cheerfully, as the box settled down in front of him. He pushed open the lid. This is a fine time to change your underwear, snarled Rincewind. In a minute all those guards and priests are going to come back, and they're going to be upset, man. Water, murmured Two Flower. The whole box is full of water. Well, it wasn't the ocean. Rincewind peered over his shoulder. There was no sign of clothes, money bags, or any of the other tourist belongings. The whole box was full of water. A wave sprang up from nowhere and lapped over the edge. It hit the flagstones, but instead of spreading out, began to take the shape of a foot. Is that Tethys? Another foot and the bottom half of a pair of legs followed as more water streamed down as if filling an invisible mold. A moment later, Tethys the sea troll was standing in front of them, blinking. I see, he said at last. You two. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. He looked around, ignoring their astonished expressions. I was just sitting outside my hut, watching the sunset when this thing came roaring up out of the water and swallowed me, he said. I thought it was rather strange. Where is this place? Krull, said Rincewind. He stared hard at the now closed luggage, which was managing to project a smug expression. Smug. Smug luggage. Smuggage? Smuggage. Anyway, swallowing people was something it did quite frequently, but always when the lid was next open there was nothing inside but Two Flowers' laundry. Savagely he wrenched the lid up. There was nothing inside but Two Flowers' laundry. It was perfectly dry. I want my own luggage. I want this. Well, said Tethys. He looked up. Hey, he said, isn't this the ship they're going to send over the edge? Isn't it? It must be. An arrow zipped through his chest, leaving a faint ripple. He didn't appear to notice. Rincewind did. Soldiers were beginning to appear at the edge of the arena. Oh my god. And a number of them were peering around the entrances. Another arrow bounced off the tower behind Two Flower. At this range, the bolts did not have a lot of force, but it would only be a matter of time. Quick, said Two Flower. Into the ship. Of course. Of course they're going. Of course. They won't dare fire at that. I knew you were going to suggest that, groaned Rincewind. I just knew it. He aimed a kick at the luggage. It backed off a few inches and opened its lid threateningly. A spear arced out of the sky and trembled to a halt in the woodwork by the wizard's ear. He screamed briefly and scrambled up the ladder after the others. Arrows whistled around them as they came out onto the narrow catwalk that led along the spine of the potent Voyager. Two Flower led the way, jogging along with what Rincewind considered to be too much suppressed excitement. Because of course, Two Flower is going to be excited. Atop the center of the ship was a large, round bronze hatch with hasps around it. The troll and the tourist knelt down and started to work on them. In the heart of the potent Voyager, fine sand had been trickling into a carefully designed cup for several hours. Now the cup was filled by exactly the right amount to dip down and upset a carefully balanced weight. Oh no! The weight swung away, pulling a pin from an intricate little mechanism. A chain began to move. There was a clunk. What was that? Said Rincewind urgently. He looked down. Of course this is happening right now, too. Oh my god. This is so suspenseful, everyone. The hail of arrows had stopped. The crowd of priests and soldiers were standing motionless, staring intently at the ship. A small, worried man elbowed his way through them and started to shout something. What was that? Said Two Flower, too busy with a wingnut. Thought I heard something, said Rincewind. Look, he said, we'll threaten to damage the thing if they don't let us go, right? That's all we're going to do. Right? Yeah, said Two Flower vaguely. He sat back on his heels. That's it, he said. It ought to lift off now. Several muscular men were swarming up the ladder to the ship. Rincewind recognized the two Chelonauts among them. They were carrying swords. He began. The ship lurched. Then, with infinite slowness, it began to move along the rails. Oh my god, I'm almost at 15 minutes. Okay, I gotta stop and read in another. I feel like I'm reading super fast. It's not because I want to. It is because I want to finish this, because I need to know what's going. There's like 6 pages left. How?